welcome everybody to the Waste and Street Scene Policy Committee. Welcome to people watching at home. Thank you for attending. The meeting today is open to the public. We do not have any items that require the public to be excluded. There is a webcast which will also be available for people to view later through the Council's website. We have received no petitions and 4 public questions. Please kindly request that mobile telephones and other such equipment are switched to silent mode. There is no fire test planned for today. If there is an emergency evacuation, please take instruction from the Town Hall staff. The assembly point is Tudor Square. Can we have introductions? Let's just go down the table here and then on here. Sorry, well, let me go first. I'm Councillor Joe Otten, Chair of the Committee, Member for Dawn Totley. Minesh.
Thank you. Minesh Parrott, Crooks and Crossbow Councillor, Deputy Chair.
Councillor Mary Lee Darnell Ward. Mary Lee Darnell Ward.
Councillor Mark Russell, Shire and Brightside Ward.
Christine Gilligan, Councillor for Hillsborough Ward.
Councillor Peter Gilbert for Ecclesall Ward.
Councillor Tim Hagan for Crooks and Crossbow Ward.
Councillor Sue Alston, Councillor for Forward.
Thank you. And can we have officers? Let's do this side first.
Good morning, committee. I'm Robert Parkin, Assistant Director for Legal Services and Legal Advisor to the committee today.
Morning, councillors. My name is Richard Eyre. I'm the Director of Street Scene and Regulations.
Morning, I'm Amanda Clayton from Democratic Services.
Thank you. Apologies for absence. I understand we've got one from David Barker. Is that right? Okay, thank you for that. Exclusion of press and public, there is none, as I've said. Declarations of interest. Mary.
Yeah, I have a relative who works in the gambling industry in Sheffield.
Thank you. Minutes of the previous meeting, page 1116. Can we agree those are a correct record? Does anybody need a moment? I will take silence as the assent of the meeting. 3, 2, 1. Okay, thank you. That's agreed. Public questions and statements. So, I understand that there are 4 public questions received. I think, yes, so 3 of them have had written answers and are not here. Is that correct? And so those questions and answers will be published as part of the record of the meeting. Yes, so we do have Marion Gerson has come to ask a supplementary question. Marion, if you want to come to the desk and turn the mic on and ask your supplementary. Thank you.
Is that right? Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. Do you want to, you've had your written answer, you've seen the written answer. Do you want to ask your supplementary question?
Yes, I've seen the written answer to my original question, and I've sent in a supplementary question, which has quite a lot of parts to it.
Yes, thank you. So we've seen your supplementary question. So thank you for that. I think the procedure is that you read it out if you have it, and then you'll get I will tell you what the answer is.
Okay. Can we have a more specific date, rather than just spring 2025, such as February or March 2025, for the delivery of the detailed design for Sheldon Road? Will the work definitely be carried out before the end of 2025? And if not, why not? The reply to the original question says that the Council is committed to maintaining its aspiration of retaining all highway trees on the affected streets. All highway trees. Why is that? And who or what is the Council in this context? I've now looked at through the minutes of the Sheffield Street Tree Partnership, and I can't find any details of the discussions or decisions regarding designs for streets, nor of the criteria that the partnership has been using to reach its decisions. Are we justified in thinking that these decisions are effectively being made behind closed doors and so secret in this key matter for us?
Thank you. So let me read out the answer I've got, and I think I might expand on it a little bit. As per the Policy Committee Decision Report of 29th of August 2024, providing an update on the progress against the Lowcock Report outcomes, a workshop was held in July 2024 with the chair of the Sheffield Street Tree Partnership to discuss options for medium and high impact streets. Given the complexity of the designs, the impact on residents and trees, it was agreed that an options report would be then procured to capture at a strategic level any alternative options that could be considered. Officers are working collaboratively with colleagues in the Council's Strategic Transport and Infrastructure Department and have developed a brief that ensures options are assessed within a framework that captures sustainability, health and safety for both workers and road users, and cost. The next phase of this options report project is to assemble a task and finish group which, although including many members of the Sheffield Street Tree Partnership, is a separate entity to the SSTP core group. This group will work through various design iterations and options for each street, leading ultimately to a process of public engagement on a street-by-street basis. While this process is underway, it is unfortunately not possible to give a firm timescale for construction to commence on Sheldon Road. This is because we want to agree and finalise the optimal solution. This will have to be followed by consultations and feedback from residents. We intend to provide residents a firmer timescale by spring 2025. With regards to the approach to the retention of trees, it is obviously the aspiration of all key partners, namely the Street Tree Partnership, council officers and AMI, to retain as many trees as possible in coming to a solution for all streets. The agreed criteria for decisions around removal of highway trees is outlined in figures 2, 3 and 4 of the Sheffield Street Tree Partnership strategy, including the STCIM Street Tree Condition Impact Matrix. So, I think the question when you say who or what is the council, which I think wasn't perhaps directly answered in that full written answer, I think there is a agreed council policy and approach to this problem that is informed not least by the Lowcock report recommendations, which is to continue to attempt a collaborative and consensus solution to the questions that you put to us on roads such as Sheldon Road. And I accept and I am frustrated by how long this means that this is taking. And the procedure I've just described is the latest iteration of the procedure we're attempting to go through to reach that solution. I have asked officers when it's been put to me, can you promise me this is the last iteration of the procedure? We're not going to get to the end of this procedure and decide we haven't got a solution and start again. And they've assured me that that is the case. So I'm in their hands as much as you are. So I hope, I feel the frustration that you've brought to us, and I do hope that this is going to work this time. Thank you for coming. Thank you for coming. Thank you, Marion. I understand we've got another questioner who's come to the meeting.
She's had her written. She's got a supplementary.
Rosa, do you want to come to the desk and ask a supplementary? Yes. Can you press the button to turn the mic on?
Cool. Thank you so much. So my initial question was submitted regarding the sexual entertainment licensing proposal. I've read the response and I have a supplementary question that is also in 3 parts following the same 3 parts of the original question and the response received. So, first, I'll be reading verbatim from here on. So I'm pleased to hear that the council is attending to the shift in opinions captured in the responses to the 2 different consultations, particularly as many of us missed the 2019 consultation at the time. It's worth noting that in 2019, while 153 comments supported a nil limit on sexual entertainment venues, in the same year, nearly 1,000 people, 985 I think it was, signed an open letter to keep the last remaining sexual entertainment venue in Sheffield open. So to clarify, does the above response on the first point imply that the decision is based on popular opinion rather than the location information in the area rationale? I'd like some clarity on the role of the area rationale document. Second, Under a nil limit, a worker run or stripper collective sexual entertainment venue would presumably be unable to apply for a licence in the first place. Is that interpretation correct? And would the council be happy with that result? Third and final part, I'm pleased to hear confirmation that the conditions attached to licences mitigate risk. This confirms that the risks of unlicensed venues should be considered as counting in favour of allowing SCVs to be licensed and count against a nil limit. This means that the equality impact assessment provided with the consultation documents is misleading by suggesting the opposite. Is the council going to correct or replace the equality impact assessment? Thank you.
Thank you. So thank you for your question. So I don't have a prepared answer for this, but I'll answer as best as I can. Obviously, some of these issues are would be matters for discussion by the committee, and other members of the committee may have other views. So the licensing regime isn't something that is in general based on public opinion and popular opinion. The licensing regime there is there to meet certain licensing objectives, such as the prevention of crime disorder, the protection of children, and so on. And the decisions in adopting licenses have to be based on evidence. And you know, if 1,000 people write in, they have to write in with some evidence that might sway that judgment. That's basically how the licensing regime works. Under a nil limit, it is still possible to make an application for a license. A nil limit policy wouldn't prevent applications, but the decision would have to have regard to the policy. But effectively, the application still has to be decided on its merits. So a nil limit does kind of raise the bar, but it doesn't prevent applications being considered or accepted, and it doesn't prevent, obviously, any refusal being challenged in the courts and particularly if the policy was thought to be unsupported by the evidence. So, yeah. In regard to having a worker run stripper collective SCV, I think you make a very good point. I think that one of the motivations behind a policy, one of the motivations behind the nil limit policy, I think, is to prevent a situation of exploitation arising. And my personal view is that I would be less concerned about that if it was a worker run proposal. So your third question, I think you make a very good point that if there is a risk of unlicensed venues operating, then that is a greater risk. The whole point, again, of the licensing regime, of the updates of the policy, the point of updating the policy, among other things, is to say when there is an SEV, there are certain conditions it has to meet in order to be considered a safe place to work and so on and so forth. And alongside whether or not there is a nil limit there are conditions that the venue has to meet. And the point of updating that policy is to have greater confidence in all of that. So you're entirely right to say that an unlicensed venue wouldn't necessarily meet any of those conditions, and therefore that would be a greater risk if such a thing was to happen. So I think I will take that point away and put that back to officers to say, you actually make a very good point. If the EIA doesn't take that into account, then it does need updating. So thank you for that. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Cheers. Is it? I think. Sorry. Let me just say one other thing. We are, as I said, we are planning to. We have agreed to hold a member working group on this subject to have a look again at all the consultation responses and the issues on both sides of this question, and we would be happy to take further submissions into that if you want to. If you'd like to send something in. Because obviously, I think you bring an important point of view to this that we want to take into account. Thank you.
Thank you. Please let me know if there's a formal procedure I should go through to try.
Yeah, have you just send us another email and we'll keep in touch. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thanks. Thank you. Members' questions? Yeah, thank you. So the procedure here is, again, we've got a written question, written answer. Has Minesh received the written answers?
Yes.
Yes. So you don't have any follow-ups? Oh, right. I'm not... I might just do that. Was that a hand, Sue? No. I'm not... I was going to ask Minesh, actually, what the thing about heavier vehicles, what are you getting at?
I mean, it was partly a curiosity on my part, thinking in terms of we signed a contract with Amy many years ago where I think the average weight of cars was a lot lower. I was wondering if we're noticing any impact of heavier vehicles on our regularity of resurfacing. But
Yeah, I mean, it's a trend, isn't it? The cars have got heavier over the last 20 years, and EVs are substantially heavier than other vehicles. My understanding would be is actually that's still trivial compared to the impact of buses and HGVs, that it's not a linear, the damage a vehicle does to the road is not a linear relationship with weight. It's kind of an exponential or, polynomial relationship. Okay, thank you for that. Okay, so work programme. Amanda, is this you?
Thank you, Chair. I feel there have been a few changes since the publication of this work programme, so I just wanted to bring your attention to a few of those, if I may. The pest control item that we were due to consider today has been moved back to the December meeting, just in case you're wondering where that had disappeared to. So in terms of agreeing what's coming forward, December we have the pest control item. The review of vehicle specifications age limits now has a date to be confirmed, and the safety advisory group policy for open air events has moved to April 25, and the budget options for 25-26 are no longer coming to formal committee meeting. And then the Streets Ahead report, which is a refresh, we perhaps intend to have a separate meeting for that later in December to give the committee sufficient time to consider that properly. So we will confirm that date as soon as we have it. February is as published, April just with the new item that's moved from December, and then in the items with dates to be confirmed, the sexual entertainment venues item, which we've just mentioned, the core investment programme approval, and both the review of vehicle specification items. So those are the amendments to what was published.
Thank you. Minesh.
thank you, Amanda, and thanks, Chair. Just a couple points, I guess. There are a couple mentions to the committee in Wednesday's full council meeting, both on the Green Party motion on a cross-party working group for obstructed parking, which I know we're progressing internally already, but I think needs some consideration about when that will feed back to the committee. And also there were a few references to city centre management and nighttime economy, looking at Safe Square and other things. I know we've also had email discussions on licensing in light of the PSPO and when alcohol aside. I think there's potentially a wider piece of work here that we can look at about the nighttime economy. I know I've raised previously the Get Me Home Safely changes to licensing policy as well, so I think there's something in there that could be a future item.
Thanks, Minesh. Yeah, so it's interesting that I'm going to come to you in a second, Sue, because it's kind of on this. I have on my list a piece of work which potentially is overlapping with that, which is on city centre strategy. I've particularly been impressed on me by the Business Improvement District Board, which I sit on representing the council. They received a presentation on the city's growth strategy, and the consensus view was, this is all very marvellous, but unless you sort out some of the issues in the city centre, we're not going to grow. And so part of that is the nighttime economy stuff that you've referred to. The licensing question or the PSPO about street drinking during the day is another part of that. But also I think the strategy around, obviously in partnership with the police around crime and disorder, litter and graffiti, waste management as well. There are issues, I think, that cause, cause attractiveness questions in the city centre. So all of that, I think there's a piece of work to be done there. And it may in the first instance be a question of drawing together all the things that we are doing and just understanding it as a strategy and filling in any holes. Is that something, Richard, can you comment on this? Is that something we can do and put on the work programme?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Just to be clear, city centre management falls under this committee, but crime and disorder, Safe Square example, sits elsewhere in another committee. However, Councillor, we have discussed around bringing the hygiene, the operational strategy for the city centre should sit here. So we'll take that as a piece of work. It's in our business plan for this year and our service plan. We'll take that as a piece of work to start to develop that strategy, what brings all the committee functions and leads for city centre together, including crime and disorder, including nighttime economy management. And maybe that's a working group we develop. I know you're keen on doing that, Chair, with members. Whether it actually comes back to committee for a formal approval or whether it's operational, but definitely needs member involvement, and we'd welcome member involvement into that.
Thanks for that. Okay, well, can I say that's agreed that we go ahead with that? I mean, the Safe Square, although you say it doesn't sit here, the question was put to full council and it was sent to me rather than to any other chair. So I don't think possibly there ought to be more clarity on where it does sit, because you're not going to lead on a strategy if you don't know whose job it is to lead on it. So because I think we all agreed, didn't we, in full council, that Safe Square was a successful pilot project, and we'd like to see it resumed. Okay, Sue.
Yeah, just a simple one. This really, in view of the questions we've just had, can we have any sort of approximate timescale for when we're going to be looking at the SEVs and licensing? Because I know there's a working group meeting, but I didn't know if that's got a schedule or expected completion date.
Well, it hasn't met yet, I can say. Is there anything we say on timescale? I think we need to have the meeting, I think, in order to be able to do that. Okay. Anything else? Peter?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I echo Minesh's raising of the cross-party working group or task force on the parking issues, which I know that we all share concern over. And I'd like to just recognise the Wednesday's full council meeting where we passed a cross-party, fully supported motion that supports the cross-committee working group, which aims to work with parking services and police to eliminate obstructive parking and reduce road danger for all walkers, wheelers and cyclists. And the reason I think it's important to say basically what Minesh has already said is, you look at the questions today, we've got questions from Joel Gilbert and questions from Christina Race. And, it's clearly something we need to be pushing forward. So do we have an update on what work is being done on getting the task force together?
The cross-committee working group, I was slightly baffled that it seemed to need a formal decision of one of the committees to do it. And I offered to bring it here, and TRC said, no, we're meeting first, we'll do it. And did they do it? I'm not... No. Right. Well, so it appears to me it's got to wait for the next round of committees. I don't quite understand why a cross-committee working group needs a formal decision of the committee and a paper when we don't do that for working groups of one committee. But I have to defer to legal advice, Rob, don't I?
So a task group is something that the committee would formally resolve to appoint. I think a working group, there might be a bit more flexibility on that. I don't know the answer to the question. It depends on what's being proposed, but what's the best way of coming back to it? Should you and I have a conversation, Chair, about whether or not it needs a formal decision, and if not, then we'll use the flexibility.
Well, yes, I'm happy with that. I think I just endorse Peter's point. Is that can we get on with it, please? I don't know if I particularly care what kind of group it is. Okay, anything else on the work programme? No, I take that as agreed then. Thank you. Oh, Peter, yes.
Sorry to be a burden. Robert Parkin, what would have more teeth, a task force or a working group?
So I think that the product of a formal task and finish group is that it has within the confines of a committee there will be a clear resolution as to what it's covering, and that may mean that the committee has more clarity over what comes back to it and the extent of its coverage. Correspondingly, a working group might have the flexibility to discover and develop more. It's less about the teeth it has, I think, than the quality of the output of its work. And I think in both instances, I'm sure that officers would look to support a high quality process.
Thank you. Minesh.
Thanks. It's a separate point, but just with the number of items we have on the agenda for December's meeting, I wonder if we might want an urgency sub or something to take some of those, because I don't think we'll get through.
Yes, urgency sub wouldn't be the correct thing. It would be extraordinary meeting. We are talking about having an extraordinary meeting anyway for the AMU refresh. But I agree. The December's meeting is looking quite full. Just to round off, I don't want to spend any time, Peter, debating what kind of group that we have. Full council agreed on Wednesday that it supported the group. It had a form of words in there, so I think we're tied to that. Whatever type of group that was, that full council said it would support. So we don't need to discuss that any further. But we do obviously want to expedite it getting started. All right, can we now agree the work programme? Thank you. Thank you. I'll take that as agreed. Next item is, I believe, the performance updates. Richard. Thanks. Do you want to all introduce yourselves and present the report?
Ian Ashmore, Assistant Director, Environmental Regs and Licensing.
Mohammed Idrous, Assistant Director for Highways.
Ben Bratsford, Assistant Director, Street Scene Services.
Thanks, Chair. This is the report for committee on an overview of Q2 performance, which is July to September. Members will recall we brought a paper to the last committee setting out in draft form the kind of measures we'll be bringing to committee on a forward plan. They are still draft, so the principle is they're up for debate. They're what we're currently using for our service plans within street scene and regulations, which covers majority of Waste and Street Scene Committee's portfolio. There is time and over the next few months to really shape those, drop some of those off the table, put some on, which have been missed off there, and then trying to get to that battle rhythm going forward over the next few months and years where we get consistent, where we can start to compare year-on-year growth and changes, etc. So as we discussed in the last committee report around performance, this report allows committee to understand and comment on the performance measures of a range of services delivered by the City Council and our partners which fall under the committee remit. It's recommended that Waste and Street Scene Policy Committee notes the performance of relevant services and also acknowledges areas of good performance, but also areas of concern that they may wish to discuss in future knowledge briefings and or future policy committees. So acting as a companion to the new council plan, the performance framework within this report this forms part of provides a structure and approach for how Sheffield City Council will provide effective performance management against delivery of the council plan outcomes, major programmes of work and areas identified for improvement. A strong performance system and culture enables us to understand our strengths and areas requiring improvement, supporting us to successfully navigate internal and external challenges and take advantage of opportunities that arise. So this report is aimed at establishing regular performance reporting to committees and will form part of an important way for members to receive consistent and good quality information. This will strengthen members' regular understanding of service delivery and enable them to understand the wider context, implications of policy decisions and assurance of performance grip. Committee reporting will also enable service performance information from across the organisation to be shared in the public domain, increasing transparency and accountability. The outcomes framework, agreed by Finance Committee and Strategy and Resources Committee, sets out the process going forward for the year 24-25. So Q2 performance is in this committee November, Q3 performance will be March 2025, and Q4 performance will be June 2025. And then there'll be a need for an annual report around June 2025 after that Q4 performance has been declared. So each policy committee will receive a quarterly performance report, which this is part of, the content of which will be agreed with members. So we've already ran a number of knowledge briefings where we've worked through these performance measures, and we've also brought it to the last committee setting out the draft proposals. Reporting the same timescale across all committees will enable the performance reporting rhythm to be established with members irrespective of committee and set clear expectations and intent for the council. Not all directorates and services are currently in a position to begin performance. As I have mentioned before, across the City Council, there are areas exemplar around performance management. There are areas which need to improve and get a grip on performance management. So not all committees will be receiving the reports at this time scale, but the aspiration is over the next few months and quarters, all committees will start to get these reports. The performance framework links directly to Together We Get Things Done, a forward agenda for 24-25 report that was agreed at Waste and Street Scene Policy Committee in July this year. So the reasons for the decision: the Waste and Street Scene Policy Committee has delegated authority to monitor the performance of waste and street scene services to ensure that the service is delivering for the people of Sheffield. We're using limited resources that are maximised due to budgetary pressures, and the council is delivering on corporate priorities. So, Chair, and then going on to Appendix 1, do you want me to go through that in verbatim, or do you want me to just take questions by exception?
I'm happy with questions by exception.
Chair, if I can just point out, there is an error, a typo on there. On the first page, where we said more market in Crystal Peaks, the target says less than 0.1%. That should actually be greater than 0.1%. That, unfortunately, is a typo.
I'd circled that. I'm sure we all have, yes. Christine.
So is this the time to ask a question on one of the performance indicators, or are we just accepting it? Or?
Yes. So I don't want to get into detailed discussions of each of the kind of service areas caused by this that would be more appropriate for knowledge briefing, but if you have a comment on the kind of the datum of the indicator, and you want to draw some conclusion from that, or if you want to query whether we're measuring the right thing here, I think that's appropriate at this point.
Okay.
I
do have a question then. It's on page 45. It's around the fixed penalty notices for littering and fly tipping. And it does say if the SPNs aren't paid, the offenders are taken to court. Might be helpful to know how many don't pay and how many go to court, I think.
Yeah, I've not actually got it on me, but we do have that figure, and we can give you that percentage. So it's something that we track, because it's really important when you've got a fixed penalty regime that if people don't pay, they understand that there's a consequence of that and that you do pursue it. There might be a very, very small percentage that for some legal reason that you don't, but yeah, the vast majority do, and we've got a good track record on that.
Thanks. We did discuss that point at some length before we took the report on the fly tipping penalties. Yeah, okay, fair enough. Yeah, I've got Tim next, then Sue, then Mark.
It's really just wanted clarification on page 36. City Centre Management, the 23.6%, 24 versus 23, because it's a variance for the other. What does that actually mean? I'm trying to work out what that figure relates to. It's at the bottom of the page, City Centre Management, page 36, percentage change to City Centre footfall, and at the very bottom of the next paragraph.
I think, Tim, you have to go on to the next page. It says month on month on top of the next page. Yeah. Richard.
Thanks, Councillor. it's not helpful how this is shown on this Word document. If I'm completely honest, when I talk about the maturity of the organisation around performance management, councillors may be aware around Power BI, which brings this to graphs and you can start to track it. It's easier to see. We're not in a position at the moment to be able to use Power BI from a capability point of view. So this will move to a Power BI dashboard in future where it'll be a lot easier to understand and see on one page. It's a bit clunky at the moment how we've had to present it, but that will come over the next few months.
Follow up on that, yeah, because that would be much more useful because, you know, when you're talking about footfall, it also, I presume it depends on what events are happening at certain times. When Easter falls, which is one of those big things which the economic indicators always has a big issue. So some of those comparisons would be and how you'd work those into the dashboard to make it a bit more easy to identify when things are really failing or whether it's just you know, a statistical anomaly based on what's what was happening in a previous year. There's a special festival or something like that. That's, you know, that's the thing, and hopefully what you're working towards that. Hopefully that will sort that out. Thank you.
Yeah, and I'd endorse that. It's finding a way of presenting it that highlights the trends and doesn't get excited about the blips, isn't it? That's, I think, is what we want. So.
Yeah, I think my question is more or less exactly that, which is I know in the, well, firstly, thank you for putting this together. I do actually think it's really useful. It's also quite interesting, but my sort of comment or question about it is that I think what would be most useful is to look at longer term trends. And I know you have commented on that in some of the comments, and that is useful, but if that could be sort of, sorry, I'll turn away from my microphone. If that could be as sort of a separate point, maybe related when we get that far to the average of the previous year. So if you're just looking at the previous quarter, that often isn't very meaningful, but if you compare it with, say, the same quarter the previous year or something, I think that would be really helpful. Thank you.
Thanks. Mark.
Thank you. Two quick questions. So page 37, taxi licensing. Is that taxis driving in Sheffield or taxis licensed by Sheffield?
Yeah, just to confirm, that's about the taxis that we license.
So do we do any spot checks for those things on taxis driving here not licensed by us?
In which of the two?
Well, either of them, to be honest. I think it's the same question.
Compliant ones, or do you mean the overall CAS compliance?
I've gone to my second question. There we go. Yeah, I'm talking about the first one mostly.
So where we're saying that 97% of taxis that we license are CAS compliant, it is ours that we're doing that for. There's also monitoring around the wider clean air zone of types of vehicles that are going through there as well. So we will be able to get a bit of a sense of the overall private hire trade going through and Hackney carriage trade going through, what the overall compliance is of those as well.
I mean, it raises the point, doesn't it, that maybe if it's to come here or whether it's come to TRC, the proportion of vehicles in the clean air zone that are compliant is probably a worthwhile figure.
Yeah, I think there was a report published which went through TRC, I think, earlier this year that covered the overall air quality compliance, types of vehicles, what we're seeing throughout the city. So, again, just to confirm that the trends are showing that the clean air zone is having an impact on improving the compliance levels of vehicles throughout the city. I think it's around 16% in the city centre and 22% improvement in the wider Sheffield area. So, overall, the clean air zone is having an impact, but that has gone through TRC committee.
The clean air zone is having more impact outside of the clean air zone than inside, is that what you're saying?
That's correct.
22% outside and 16% inside, that's extraordinary. Okay. Well, a thorny question for TRC to ponder, though. So let's get back to Western Street Scene. Mark, did you have another question there?
Page 46, this one, the fly tipping statistics. Obviously positive. I think some people out there in the city might be sceptical. So I'm just wondering what monitoring we do to make sure that those figures are accurate.
So monitoring is done through a number of, monitoring is undertaken through a number of procedures. We obviously have Amy employed under the PFI contract who have their own inspectors that go around the city undertaking the inspections and will record any fly tipping that is being identified. There's there's our officers who will be out on site as well, who will, if they pick up, they will also report it. We also encourage members of the public to report it, and it's also reported through the LACs as well. Is that the question? Sorry, I'm just
not necessarily.
Right.
No, it's more. So we're saying that in the last month, reported monthly. In the last month or quarter, every single fly tip was removed within 5 working days. How do we know that's the case, or are we relying on Amy's self-reported figures there?
Right. Yeah. So there is a fundamental element of it is Amy's self-reporting figures, but we do the quality checks ourselves as well. So there will be spot checks that we'll pick up on, but not necessarily monitoring all of Amy's work in this area.
Chair, if I can just add to that. So Mohammed's absolutely right, but also any complaints come forward, so we rely on the members of the public, Fix My Street app, but also direct complaints if that fly tip is not gone. So when people log, I suppose the health warning on this is just on the highway. This doesn't cover land off the highway, parks, which are covered by a different committee. So when members of the public report any fly tipping, the clock starts on this 5-day period, and they're told that on when they put that first notification in. So we rely on the public coming forward as well if that fly tip is not going after 5 days to let us know. So that's a bit of a plea to the public. But Mohammed's right, we've got our own teams going out. We do use the contract for self-checking, if you like. And any failure does result in what's called a penalty point against the Amy as part of the contract. And that then results in a financial penalty as well if they don't comply.
Thanks. Mary.
My question is about reporting. What you've said, we encourage the public to report, and I know there's a small group in my area who do that through a WhatsApp group. They tell each other what they've reported, but there are areas which underreport compared to other areas, and we know if in an area where there's very little fly tipping, one bit of fly tipping gets probably dozens of calls, where in another area people just walk past it and don't report. So what are we doing to encourage people in the worst affected areas to report, and how easy are we making it for them? Fix My Streets is great if you have downloaded it and you understand how to use it and so on, but Richard, it's a big problem in certain parts of the city.
Yes, so in respect to that, we absolutely recognise that, and we've had conversations, haven't we, around that wider issue. It's on fly tipping, it's on rubbish in gardens, it's on rats, it's on a whole thing. So, and it feeds into that whole issue about environmental inequality that we're really working on. And one of the mechanisms for that is the work that we're doing with LACs on the environmental toolkit, which is around making it much more explicit what our offer is, how residents can get involved, how we can improve reporting, and that way drive it down. You'll obviously be aware that we've been working on the hotspots with the LACs as well, and we continue to look for evidence and try and catch the people who are doing it. So I think that's the main aim, working with the LACs, making it very aware, helping with them, getting comms out. But I think this big push on the environmental toolkit that Dan Whittaker is leading on with the LACs, the North East and the South West are two of the LACs that are particularly championing that in the pilot stage. I think the aim of that is that overall will drive down that inequality that you've talked about from if we sit back too much and become reactive, we perpetuate some of those environmental inequalities, and that's what we're trying to tackle.
I think, Councillor, to add to that as well, we're also looking across all our uniform services, but also any officer walks down a street, to really give them, to empower them where they can take responsibility to report fly tipping and other environmental issues. So a piece of work we're hoping to start to implement next year, early next year, is around giving them the tools, whether it's Fix My Street or a different way of doing it. So every council officer who's got a council badge, whether in uniform or not, will be encouraged to lift their head up and start to report stuff and start to pick up on stuff, not just in their job description, in their role, but actually take a wider view.
I suppose another question is about hearts and minds, isn't it? And about what we're doing about what can we do, what are we doing, what should we be doing about changing people's behaviour in terms of, you know, them driving their own behaviour not to fly tip. And I know that in certain areas people come from out of that area to fly tip, and in, you know, and sometimes it's local people. So anything in the pipeline about how we can change that motivation to keep your area clean? We've tried lots of things in my area, and I'd love to know what the answer might be.
Yeah, just briefly, I mean, we'll be picking this up in the fly tipping strategy work that we'll be talking to you about further. But in the environmental toolkit, part of that is around behaviour change and looking at what does it take to change perceptions and the psychology around it, both in terms of the psychology reporting, but also the psychology around the offenders. So that's what we're working on, and some of the things are in terms of what can communities themselves do, and sharing good practice, giving examples, because we've got some good examples. We can't do it all alone as a council, obviously, so we need to empower communities more, but we realise that can't be just empty words. We need practical examples of how people can get involved. We need to make it as easy as possible for them to do that, and that's what we're doing as we develop this environmental toolkit, which is, you know, going to be a work in progress as we carry on. It's not set in stone. We'll keep developing in it, and the LACs are crucial to that.
I think, again, just to add, across quite a lot of our regulatory service and enforcement services, we use the 4 E's. So it's the engage, it's the educate, it's the encourage, then it's the enforce. So enforcement should, and rightly so, should always be the last resort. Unfortunately, we do have to do that quite a lot in a lot of situations, but definitely that engage and educate is a key part to try and change behaviours, and that's going to be a key part of the fly tipping strategy.
Thanks.
So to say, I think that is absolutely crucial, because I think that's the only way you're going to eliminate it. People dump stuff because they know the council will come and pick it up, and that's a great motivator to dump stuff where, you know, round the corner on a particular street, in a dark street. You know what I mean? You know all this anyway, don't you?
Thanks, Mary. Look, I allowed the question, but it's not what I intend for this session, which is, I don't want this, because it's going to come 4 times a year. I don't want every time it turn into effectively a briefing session on the whole portfolio, which is the danger, isn't it? But it's a very important point. So, Peter, right? Yeah. Okay. Thank you. I have some comments on the dashboard that I'm just going to go through. I mean, obviously, I appreciate it's a work in progress. It's made a lot of progress, I think, since the other version we've seen. I just wanted to pick out a few things which I think I'd like us to a little bit more work on. So, under city centre management, I think the green purple flags things are important, so I'm glad they're there. But the question is, well, look, we've got the ambassadors, we've got the CCTV, we've got the various teams, litter and graffiti and so on. I don't get a sense from these indicators what their job is, what they're there to achieve, and are they achieving it, and how big a challenge are they facing? So I don't have an answer, but the question is there something about that can be captured in the performance dashboard? On taxi licensing, I think, you know, a target 50%, and we've got figures of 90-odd%. I think that target can go. I don't think that's useful anymore. And there's various information-only things about numbers. I think the questions for taxi licensing are: do we have enough taxis? Do we have enough taxis that are licensed by us? I suppose. What is the average emissions? That'd be something to track over time. Has it improved with some of the interventions we made, not just the clean air zone, but also the emission standards for licensed vehicles that we've altered? And then possibly, what is the rate of complaints? So what is the customer satisfaction of taxi users? Is there some measure of that, such as the rate of complaints? And what is the rate of kind of offences by taxi drivers, possibly, which might suggest that we're not haven't set a high enough bar for licences. I've got a lot to develop, Christine. Is it on this? Okay. So I don't know if something could be put in on tax licensing on those rather than instead of the numbers we've got. Food safety, I'm happy with. I have a note which I can't read. No, don't want those. The parking services, again, I'm not sure that the numbers of PCNs is the issue. The question for parking services is, what is parking services there to enforce? How big is the problem of bad parking, and how much, how successful are we in tackling it? And I don't have a measure for that, but that's what I want. That's what I kind of want to see. Waste management. Again, I'm not sure these are the right targets. I think it's interesting, isn't it, that I think these are green. I've got the printed in black and white, so green and amber are very, very similar. But I think we've got green targets here, and we've got a strike on. And we're not emptying the green bins at the full rate. We're emptying them at half the rate, and we've closed the bring sites. By any standard, the waste service is therefore underperforming because there's a strike on. But you wouldn't know it to look at the dashboard. So I think we need to have a reflection on that. Richard, yes.
I'll just come back on that. So this is, unfortunately, because of the timing, these are quarter 1 figures.
Right.
So
okay.
It's not showing the true impact of the strike. Quarter 2 figures. How waste works, as we rely on information from Veolia, we couldn't get the information for quarter 1 in time for the timescale for committee.
Okay, so the green bins would be reflected in the successful bin collections figure. Okay, so that would be, so there would be some reflection of that. Fair enough. Environmental protection, again, numbers of penalty notices issued. I'm not sure. I'm not sure that's the right. Obviously, it's a measure of the kind of throughput of the work, but is it? I'm not sure it's a great measure of performance. I don't have a solution. Licensing. Again, it's numbers of licences issued, number of tenders have been issued. The question for licensing is how are the licensing objectives being met in the city? What is the licensing service? How big a challenge is it to ensure those are met, and how well are we doing in meeting that challenge? Again, it's a very vague question, but I don't know if there's something that captures that a little better. And again, you can look at questions like numbers of complaints and numbers of reviews. It'd be nice to know how much illegal tobacco or stuff was being sold. But I guess if we know about it, we can do something about it, can't we? There's stuff we don't know about. It's the challenge. But if there is some indication of that, some measure of that, I think that would be useful. The highways maintenance. Yeah, the measures we've got there are fine. But I mean, what people bend our ears about are the state of the roads overall, aren't they? And so that's the measure I'd want to see. Our roads are X% good and X% not good, and that's can we follow that over time? So that's, sorry to go through them all. That's my list of comments on the dashboard. I appreciate. It sounds like a litany of complaints. There's a lot of good stuff in there, but I hope we can just tighten that up a bit. Christine.
Thank you, Jack. I've got 2 points. So the first one, I think I'm going to disagree with you a little bit, Chair. It's about this document. I mean, I agree. At the moment, we're working through to get the right performance measures. But I do think that as councillors in a public meeting, we ought to be challenging the performance in public if we aren't happy with it. So I would hope that in future committee meetings, when we get these reports, we can talk about individual issues, because I think it reflects to the public that we are concerned and we're trying to change things. And I don't agree that it should all be done in a private briefing.
Sorry, Christine, I may have given the wrong impression. I did say if you want to take up a number that's in here and raise a point because the number is too high or too low, or whatever, that's perfectly fine. That is appropriate.
So I may be misinterpreted.
So maybe if I suggest not.
Briefings.
But we did stray in, and I did allow it. But we did stray into, on the fly tipping question, a general discussion of how we might encourage people not to fly tip, and I think that's that is probably more appropriate to a briefing.
Okay.
Okay.
Oh, well, I
But-
did have one point on the fly tipping. And I will say...
Well, I can't, after the accusation of gagging you, I can't not let you know, can
absolutely. The public don't know whether it's an Amy responsibility or Park's responsibility. That's what the problem is. So, you know, I see lots of people who say to me, oh, I've reported that fly tipping, but they've reported it through Streets Ahead or whatever, Fix My Street, when it's actually not Fix My Street. How does that get taken up then? If public are reporting it through Fix My Street, what happens to fly tipping if it's on Park's land? That is the question.
I think the art on that for us is just to make sure that irrespective of how the person reports it or where it is, and however it comes in, that we get it to the right place. So make it as easy as possible, going back to the earlier points, making it as easy as possible for people to report it, and then we do the back office stuff to make sure it goes to the right team. So I think what frequently happens is there might be a report where it's just over the adopted bit of the highway, and it may come through and Amy may have to go out and look at it, and then it might get passed on. So I think that's how it would generally work. The issue is if people are finding it very frustrating because they're being bounced around different people, and that's what we've been working on to try and make sure that it's as seamless as possible. You know, but if there is any feedback that it's not, absolutely let us know, because it shouldn't matter to the, you know, we need to make sure that the customer doesn't feel that difference.
And that's a key part of the customer excellence strategy, trying to be one council, because I know members have got that frustration, I've got that frustration, and as a resident I've got that frustration where you report something and it just gets moved around different council departments and takes days and days and weeks. That's unacceptable. And that's a key part, the customer experience strategy, but also in Ben's portfolio street scene, just trying to bring that together. So if it's on the street, park or whatever, then the response comes into us, and then we'll make sure it gets done, even if it's not our team directly, it'll be Parks, and trying to influence that so members of the public can report things on Fix My Street, comes to us, and we'll do the work behind it to make sure it gets appropriately resolved.
Thank you. No, I that. I realise I went straight to Christine after my lengthy comments without giving officers a chance to respond. I assume that means you all agree completely with what I've said. If that's the case, I'll happily leave it there. Okay, can we agree the recommendations? Let's just turn back to them, which is to where are we? To note the performance of relevant services and acknowledge the areas of good conformance and areas of concern that we may wish to discuss in future knowledge briefings and or policy committee. Can we agree that? Yep, thank you, that is agreed. Okay, final item is the gambling policy. Do you want, Shimon, is that you? Do you want to come and introduce that? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. This report sets out the details of our revised statement of principles, which is our gambling policy, and the consultation process that has been carried out. We have a legal duty to publish a gambling policy every 3 years, and we are now in the review period to ensure we have it published and effective by January 2025. We have been developing the policy since the beginning of the year, and we're seeking approval on the final version of the document and for it to be submitted to full council for adoption. Paragraph 2 of the report details the background on why we need a policy and a review, and also explains the regulatory framework, in particular to the role of the Gambling Commission, who deals with gambling on a national level, and our role as a council to deal with gambling within our local authority area, which involves us setting the local framework for gambling through this policy, considering applications, reviewing licensing, and undertaking enforcement activities. So the policy deals with all land-based gambling, so that's casinos, betting shops, bingo halls, machines in pubs and clubs, and the policy document defines the principles that we will apply when we consider applications. So this includes what we expect operators to submit with their applications, so their policies and procedures, what our considerations will be during decision making. It details what we expect applicants to address locally, which includes local risk factors relating to the licensing objectives, particular to children and those who are vulnerable to gambling-related harm. We have mapped out these risk factors through a linked document referred to as the local area profile, and can be easily viewed via the interactive map that has been developed. So this map can be used by anyone and will show the areas of risk and vulnerability in Sheffield. Operators will use this as part of their own local area profiles and details how they can mitigate or minimise the risks that have been identified in their risk assessments. So overall, we want this policy document to provide clear guidance to all those that need to use it. So that's us as licensed and authority officers in processing application, assisting and guiding businesses when making applications in Sheffield, officers and councillors making decisions, and the public and communities who may be affected by gambling premises. We've worked with various services and authorities in reviewing this policy and local risk factors, particularly the public health team, safeguarding the police, legal services and our qualities team, to ensure we have up-to-date position on the local issues and that it's reflected within this policy document. We've briefed members and committees on the development of the policy document. We've briefed stakeholder groups, senior managers in readiness for the formal public consultation on the document. Consultation was held during the summer and was hosted on the Have Your Say page. Legislation tells us who we need to consult with, but we always consult wider than our statutory requirements. And a list of the consultees is attached at the end of the policy document at Appendix 2. We received 26 responses. Appendix A of the report details a summary of these responses and whether or not any changes have been made. There have only been minor changes and have been updated following advice from legal services and any relevant partners. The report also has a table of all the changes that have been made throughout the development of this policy and reasons why the changes have been made. This is attached to Appendix B. In all, the policy document has been strengthened, made clearer and more succinct, and it's recommended that a committee approve the policy document and for it to be referred to full council for adoption. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Do I have any? Mark?
Thanks. Yeah, thank you. There's obviously an enormous amount of work gone into this. The one concern that I would still have over it, and if we're looking at specific bits, it's 4.2, 5.2, 5.4 and 5.5. But it's all basically the same issue around clustering. Because it seems, you can see the work that you've done to beef it up and to strengthen it on the individual risk factors associated with one premises. But if you look across the city, they map deprivation, the clustering of well, many types of licensed premises, but certainly gambling premises. And it just seems to me, I've got 4.2 in front of me on page 90 if people are looking at it. It's strong on the individual risk factors of one establishment, but if you had 3 establishments, all of which posed a danger to the public because of their past record, that's strong. But if you just had a clustering of betting shops, for one example, it's less strong. And I'm not really sure how you would address that through the policy. So I just wonder whether there is somewhere, is it in the individual parts that I've mentioned, is it in a preamble that we can have a kind of overview of the clustering within an area as we define it. And obviously those areas won't always map onto local authority boundaries or ward boundaries. So that would be my only point, other than to say, you know, I agree the direction of travel is clearly strengthening in there, which I think is a good thing.
Thank you. Yes, clustering is always an issue that always pops back up, particularly around betting shops. I think any new betting shops that open now, they have to go through the planning process anyway. In regards to this policy document, we have tried to map out all of the licensed premises. So that's on the interactive map. So when operators do apply to us and they do the local area profiles, they will need to kind of address whether them applying to us is going to put more pressure onto the risk factors and to the licence and objectives. I know a lot of authorities have asked the same question, have pushed government around this about cumulative impact. There is a white paper out and they have stated that they are going to be issuing some guidance around that for local authorities and for us to use that. So at the moment we're still waiting to get a bit more information. The legislation is permissive, so we have to aim to permit as long as they comply with the requirements. But until we get a bit more information from government about cumulative impact assessments, we'll try our best with our policy and if anybody applies through their risk assessments.
Thanks. No, I would endorse obviously the comments and the answers. It's certainly my understanding that the framework we're in doesn't really give us scope to deal with clustering, and because it's permissive inherently, you know, and it probably ought to stay permissive, but it needs us to be able to deal with the challenges that we face, and not you know, give us tools to deal with things like clustering. And I don't know if it's fair to say that the area-based assessments you put in that is, in a sense, it's kind of what we can do, and yeah, there's why you referred to it in skirting the it's as close as we can get to the challenge of clustering. Let's put it that way, because you will tend to get clustering in areas of problem gambling, because they want to. The problem gamblers are despite all the codes of conduct and whatnot. Problem gamblers are where they make all their money, aren't they?
That's exactly right. Yes. So the mapping document that we've got, it highlights all the other risks as well. So if there's heightened risk in certain areas, that's something that can be used as part of the decision making.
Thank you. Are there any more? Tim and then Sue.
Do we, when we're talking about the government bringing forward adjusted proposals, we got a timescale for that, because it's one of those things that, you know, coming from Newmarket originally, and being a councillor there in the 90s, where it was an issue then, but then nothing was done in the 13 years when Labour in power last time in terms of clustering, which was a serious issue in my hometown at the time as the exponential growth. Because talking to lots of gamblers and that, one of the things is they have their lucky shops and they're not lucky shops, you know, so if they're losing somewhere, they think they move to the next. They'll move to the next bookies to try and win there, because that's the sort of lucky streak and that sort of thing. And that's where clustering does have an effect, because you see it more often than not. And I just think, you know, when they say, have you got any tips? I say, don't bet. I mean, that's the whole point of it. And that's why clustering is such an issue. And it'd be nice to see whether there was some, whether the legislation coming forward, and this time next year, if we're looking at this rate, we've got some strengthened guidance, statutory instruments or whatever coming through from the government.
Yeah, there isn't been a timetable from government, but it's something that I think most authorities are waiting for. So it'll just be us waiting until something comes out.
And will we need to update this policy if and when it does?
Yes, it depends what comes out into the guidance, what if there's any additional powers that we have or anything changes, and then it will be reviewed, yes.
Sue.
Thank you. I mean, I'm pleased to hear that that's being reviewed as well, so that's good. I'd just like to ask a question. Page 113 is what I'm looking at, but it's possibly a bit more general than that. And I may have misunderstood it, in which case that's fine, just tell me I have. But reading through this, it appears that if somebody has cause for concern about, I don't know, practices at a particular premises, from reading it, it appears that the onus is on the person making the complaint to try and provide the evidence for that licence to be revoked, rather than I don't know, that just feels a very strong onus on somebody who may be struggling themselves with gambling, or maybe parents of a young person or that's struggling. And I just wondered if you could clarify for me the support that's available and how that would actually work in practice. Because as I said, reading this, it doesn't sound very helpful to the public.
Okay, normally when we receive a review on a premises, it's done by an authority. If we have concerns from individuals or a community, we would ask them to contact us, and we would go out and find out and do some inspections, check out what they're doing in their processes and procedures, and see if there are any issues. And if there are any issues, we would try and assist the operators and the complainants. If a review is put in, we do need to evidence that. But again, we would assist, especially if it's an individual that's got the issues. It would go to a licensing committee, so they would need all the evidence to kind of weigh that and decide what steps to take afterwards.
Thank you, and that is reassuring. So if I, as a member of the public, had a concern about a particular place, where do I find out where I go to make that complaint?
It will be to the licensing service. So all our details are on this, and our web pages have all the information about making any.
Where is it clear? Like, if you have concern, report it to that. I just feel it needs to be very visible. I've never tried, so I don't know. But how visible is it to members of the public how they can complain?
Okay. Yeah, I take your point. Yeah.
Thanks, Mary.
My question is just about the levy that the establishments have to pay, these companies have to pay. Does that go, what is the percentage of their profits, and also where does it go? Does it go to a national fund, or does it go to a local fund, and how is it used? I mean, it talks about research, but is there any other practical applications it's applied for, it's used for?
Yeah, it's the Gambling Commission that implement that. So at the moment it's a certain, they do a contribution at the moment, but there will be a levy, so it'll be a percentage of their profits. So I don't have the full information about that, but I can get you that.
Thank you. I'm not seeing any more hands, so I'm just going to make a few comments. I mean, thanks for all the work going into this. It's a really important policy to have, and to have a stronger policy as we can. Problem gambling is a blight on many people's lives and many families. It is frustrating that we're only dealing with a small corner of the whole market here. The online gambling is also huge and is out of our hands in terms of regulation. I do think, I mean, while I would say it has to be allowed and people should be able to gamble as a leisure activity if they wish, the way the industry is set up with VIP programs and all this sort of thing, it is a menace. It is designed to groom people and suck people in to irresponsible behaviour. And I just hope that a better and a better regulatory framework nationally on the industry can be developed and can be imposed. I think that would be most welcome. But on this, I'm not seeing any further comments on this policy, so I think we can agree. I'll take silence of the meeting as the agreement on adopting the policy. Thank you. So yes, so that's right. Yes, the policy is we agree it here, and then it goes to full council for a final decision. Yeah, I'll take that as agreed. Thank you, and that is the final item on the agenda. So I will close the meeting. Thank you all for coming. Thank you for watching at home, and see you all next time.